So with Lost Colony right around the corner, I decided that I kind of want to do a tier list talking about all the creatures we have gotten so far for Ark Survival Ascended. So all these are the creatures that we got either for free, creatures that we voted for, creatures that were ported from the Ark Editions mod into the base game, or the premium creatures we've got from either the Bob Tall Tales pack or the Fantasy Tames DLCs. I'm also deciding that I'm not including the Odysseon or the Valwern, since I feel like it may be best to review those creatures once Lost Colony comes out. Also, I will say this right now is that I am not going to be judging whether or not these creatures are also paid or whatnot. I feel like that would be just kind of unfair, honestly, since I think some of the creatures that were paid are actually pretty good, but some people have an issue with that, so we're just gonna pretend all these creatures were free and everyone has access to all of them. So yeah, so let's get this tier list started. So the first creature we have right here is the Bison. I think the Bison's a solid A tier creature. I really, really like the Bison. I like to call it a weaker or pseudo version of the Woolly Rhino, mainly for its charge and attack mechanic. Also, it's a creature I've always wanted in Ark, you know? I remembered earlier on whenever Ark Survival Evolved had those creature votes. The Bison was definitely one of those creatures I had made in the top 10, but never in the main game. And now that it's actually here in Ark Survival Ascended, I'm definitely really happy about that. And I think it's really good and solid. Has good rough damage, and it's also an aggressive herbivore. I love aggressive herbivores. We don't have too many of those, so definitely glad we have this guy in the game. The Armadillo. Ooh. Honestly, the Armadillo is a B tier creature. Now, it's one of the creatures that introduced a whole companion mechanic into the game, which I think is very neat. I think that mechanic is very neat. I think the Armadillo is just kind of because I really don't know what else it does besides the whole, like, unique saddles or armor attachments that it has, which is really cool and all. I like the idea of having different, like, attachments or saddles for different situations, and I think that's very cool that the Armadillo has something like that. But overall, I don't know, I just don't really like it that much. I mean, I was definitely excited because it was a interesting take of a canine, and I would always appreciate more canines in Ark, but I don't know, it's just nothing really interesting, honestly. I just think it's just okay, you know? Alright, next we have is the Cat, a April Fool's creature, and honestly, B tier. I think it's just solid, you know? It doesn't really have anything like game-breaking with it or very unique about it. It has some aspects of stuff that we already have. I think what I do really like is that this thing protects you from those annoying pesky smaller creatures like Microraptors or the Pagos. Definitely some annoying creatures you don't want to come across. If you have this guy on your shoulder, don't worry about it. It does give you some pellet from fur balls. And, you know, it's a cat. It's cute, you know? But, you know, overall, it's just nothing really super unique about it, but I still like the cat. Very cool. The Deinosuchus. Ooh. You know what? S tier. I was debating if the Deinosuchus is an A tier creature, but no. No, this thing's an S tier. Even with its nerf that I got a little while ago, that it doesn't apply the bleed, I think, with its Gigabyte 2 bosses, it is still a monster of a creature. Like, whenever I think of a terrifying alligator creature in Ark, or just in general, I think of the Deinosuchus. This thing's a monster. Has some very interesting stuff with it. I love the Gigabyte. It's a pretty good aquatic team to have, or semi-aquatic team to have. And also, it's very interesting that it has a little bit of a damage resistance on its head, which I never understood why it has that, but I've always appreciated it. You know, definitely very nice. It's just overall just a good creature to have. Like, I definitely say if you're doing anything that's revolving around the oceans and you don't get a Deinosuchus, you definitely should. Definitely a very good creature to have. The Dreadnoughtus. Ooh, I think this is a good A tier creature. I really like the Dreadnoughtus. Not only that it's the first herbivore that we ever got voted into the game, but also it's a powerhouse. Now, this thing's just main design is to fight the Titan, which is very, very cool, you know? Having one creature that's perfectly designed to slay some of the bigger creatures in Ark, I will always appreciate, because, you know, giant kaiju battle or something like that. Like, come on, it's so cool. And I just think overall it's just a really cool looking creature. I also really like its design, that, you know, how it infuses with element or whatever that some of the extinction creatures have. I think it's just a really, really cool looking creature, and I love it. And definitely gotta say, probably, I don't know if I will say if it is. It's definitely within my top 3 at the very least favorite community voted creatures. And I do hope that we eventually get another herbivore in the game. At least, you know, another community voted herbivore, since so far we only got carnivorous creatures. But who knows? Time will change maybe. The Dreadmere. I don't know. We'll put this thing in high B, or, you know, low A. We'll do low A. I think it's a high B or low A creature. I'm gonna put the cat above. I'm just doing a little bit of rearranging. Yeah, I like how that is right now. But yeah, the Dreadmere is a very, you know, it's a very unique tame. I know a lot of people always wanted a like Pegasus-like creature in Ark, and well, you have that. Except for it's a living nightmare, and I definitely do say its taming method is pretty cool. I like how it's like some satanic sacrifice thing, and then you gotta kill like things that it summons, and then it's a really, you know, fun taming method. I really do like it. Ability wise, you know, it does have some pretty good abilities. It can heal itself, it can fire a projectile, and also has its own like kind of cryopod kind of like ability, which I think is pretty cool, which I think it scales with its weight, which, hey, that is pretty interesting. I always like them whenever they do something interesting that scales with these stats. So I think it's overall a pretty good solid creature. I haven't really tamed it that much though at all, besides that one time I did a video on it, because I don't know, it's just something I never like really go out to see to tame. You know, more I'm telling about, I think I'll bump this guy actually to low B. Yeah, low B seems right. Yeah, I think we'll do that. The Ceratosaurus, ooh. Yeah, he's A tier. I love the Ceratosaurus. It's a really, not only it's a really cool looking theropod creature, but it's also a very interesting gimmick with it being a pretty aggressive, mobile, supportive creature. And I always like a good supportive creature in Ark. I think sometimes it's just fun to have new ways to help aid your tames in battle. And the Ceratosaurus is definitely one of them, with its being able to heal other carnivorous creatures. Love that idea and that mechanic. I think that's really cool. And overall, just pretty good and solid. I don't know, I kind of want to put it in S, but I think I prefer the Dreadnoughtus and the Bison more, you know? I don't think it's going to be an S, but we'll see. The Gigantoraptor. Ooh, the first ever Ark Survival Ascended creature that we got. And you know what? It's an S tier. I really like the Gigantoraptor. Now, it could be because I do like breeding creatures in Ark. I like the mutations, making super strong versions of creatures that we get. I've always appreciated that, or just like doing that. And this guy definitely helps with its interesting gimmick, being able to like imprint onto baby creatures. I think it's very cool and unique. I like it a lot. And you know, it's also a really cool design creature. It's like a weird, like, kind of like a fantasy kind of peacock, you know? I know I have seen people say they're not a big fan of the Gigantoraptor's design, feeling like it's way too fantasy, which I can see that. It definitely takes a lot of aspects of birds, you know? Like I mentioned, has like the peacock kind of like feathers, and kind of has like the, I'm not sure what it's called on a turkey, you know, with his little thing it has on his throat, the little blue area right here, if you understand what I'm trying to say. And I can understand that, but I think it's just overall a very pretty looking creature. So, yeah, definitely like this guy a lot. Ooh, the Megaraptor. I wasn't a really big fan, honestly, of this guy winning. I think there was a lot more, personally, in my opinion, better options for Valguero. But you know what? Yeah, right there. Good, solid A tier. I think I really like the idea behind this, that this creature's not meant for boss fights or, like, having multiple in one fight. And the main idea, or how you're supposed to use the Megaraptor, is you're supposed to isolate and just 1v1 other creatures. And I really, really like that idea of it. Has some strafe movement, which is good. Really good mobility with it. And there's a way, if you use the pounce, you can actually negate fall damage quite a bit. So it's definitely very good. And also the solo potential this thing has against other creatures, if you like isolate them by themselves and there's no other Megaraptors, this guy can deal a lot of damage, honestly. Definitely a very, very cool creature, and I definitely have come around it. I originally wasn't a big fan of it, but you know, it has slowly grew into my heart, and I really do hope it's the last for a while, at least community voted theropods we get, because we have a lot of theropods coming their way, fellas. If you don't know, there's quite a few theropods coming to from the Ark Editions mod into the base game. So hopefully this is the last guy we get for the time being for a little while. So yeah, the Archeon. Ooh, you know what? I think this guy's a low S tier at the very least. This thing is just really, really good. Has a little, not like a little bit of everything, but it has a very interesting gimmick. Not only that it's an actual sea turtle, because the one that we have in Ark, I forget its name, is like more of a tortoise. This is like an actual sea turtle. It has fins and stuff, so it actually looks really good, you know, with that. But also it's a gimmick with it being a very good against in harvesting the jellyfishes in Ark to get the biotoxin. Very nice indeed. And also that sushi is very handy. It's very handy, especially if you just so happen to like mess up a tame and just want some of that tame effectiveness back. Just feed it some sushi, then get that percentage back. Very good. It's just a really good creature. I really like it a lot. Another pretty good aquatic creature, the Helicorpion. I don't know if I put it in S. High A. So, one, it's a new shark, which is really cool because the only other prehistoric shark we have in Ark is the Megalodon. And the Helicorpion is a much smaller but more versatile, with it being able to have a tail whip that not only stuns but applies torpidity, which you could probably use, or you can use, to knock out some aquatic tames. So it's a pretty good knockout creature, which I do like. But its main gimmick is it can turn loot that you get into blueprints, or at least there's a chance. And I just think that's a very unique and also really game-changing thing. And I knew when this thing was added to base Ark, it would be a pretty big game changer here. Because I know there's probably quite a few people that have like pretty good loot, but they don't have blueprints of that loot. And now you can with the Helicorpion. And I just think it's a really good creature. And out of any aquatic tames, it's definitely high up there, the ones that you must tame. The Oasisaur. Now, this is going to be probably the only creature that goes in here, but it's a D tier, man. I don't know about the Oasisaur. It's just kind of just meh, you know? Like, I think just out of all the creatures we've gotten so far in Ark Survival Ascended, this is the one that I just felt so about. Now, it sucks, because I like the idea of it. It's like, big creature, cool, and it's a giant floating island thing. So it's a big, like, floating base, which sounds really cool on paper. And also some pretty unique abilities. It has a revive mechanic, and also can cure stuff and whatnot. And you can also get resources from it. It sounds pretty insane, but in-game, it's just kind of you know? I think one of the main things that kind of suck is that it cannot defend itself. So you can probably legit have like a weak creature easily take out an Oasisaur, because the Oasisaur has no attacks. It'll just let it happen pretty much, and that kind of sucks. And the revive mechanic, while useful, it's not like game breaking, which is surprising to say, because a lot of games that have some kind of revive mechanic to them are usually pretty strong. Like, they're on a low cooldown, or like low-ish cooldown for a revive. The Oasisaur, it's a 24-hour cooldown. That's quite a bit, and I understand that if they had a shoulder, this thing would be a lot more broken, but at the same time, I don't know. I mean, you're reviving the creature and they're going back to being a baby, so it's like, I don't know. So it's kind of like one of those creatures that, honestly, if you are saying that this thing's pay to win, I think you're kind of full of it, me personally. I mean, I know, like I said earlier, I'm not gonna talk about whether or not these creatures, if they're being paid or whatnot, will that dictate it or not, but it's just one of those creatures that I just don't think deserves that whole, like, pay to win aspect of it. I don't know, it's so meh, you know? The Drakelane. I think Drakelane's a high B. I really like the Drakelane. I think what I really like about it is its variations, and it has like different breath attacks and whatnot, or like different utilities of it. So the two ones that I mostly use, because I don't really use the other ones, is the Spring and autumn one, the spring giving that health regen, which is very useful to heal up some creatures. I wouldn't say as good as like a Daedon or Snow Owl or anything, but you know, if you don't have those on hand, you have a Drake Lane, just sit on a creature for a little while and just slowly heal up. And if it's a carnivorous creature and you're feeding it raw meat at the same time, that HP is going up really fast. And the auto one is definitely good for any harvesting creatures or if you just want to have more of a melee impact. So those are definitely my favorite out of the four. And it also has a whole like treasure mechanic, which is a little bit too much at times. You know, I feel like sometimes when I get loot from it, I'm like, wow, that's a lot. But at the same time, it's quite big grindy to get all that XP just to get the chest, since you can't even get it from babies or like, you know, creatures you raise and kill. Because even though that XP will go towards the creature you're using to kill those with, it does go to the Drakeling, which I think is a fair balance thing, because that would be a little bit OP, honestly, if that was. So it only works on wild creatures and whatnot. I think it's decently fairly balanced, even though the loot could be a little bit too much in my personal opinion. But overall, pretty good, solid creature. Ah, the Shatsosaurus. Oh man, this thing I think is so far the only creature that I put on my number one or like high up of a creature I wanted to win a community vote, and it won. It's just, I'm putting it in C tier because I think it's kind of in a weird similar situation with the Oasis but at least the Chastosaurus has a little bit potentially more going on with it. Now, one, it's a breedable creature, which I will always appreciate. I think it's fun to breed and mutate and make unique or colors or just make a creature stronger. Two, it does have a unique saddle. I do love its idea of it being a living submarine. I always thought that's really cool. And that's kind of where it kind of ends a little bit with me with the Shatsosaurus, which sucks. Because I like its abilities, because, you know, it's pretty much a submarine with its ability, being able to locate, shoot missiles. It pretty much has a built-in, like, tech binoculars or whatever with its saddle. So it's really, really cool, and I really like it. It's just, the issue is with the map that it's so far on, and that being the center. Now, they did make the center bigger, especially the water parts of it, to make this creature more viable, but at the same time, because of how Ark Oceans currently are, there's not that many like reasons to tame most aquatic creatures in the game. The ones that we have like up here have a thing going on with them why people would want to tame them, with the Archeon, with the Sushi, the Helicorpion, because it can give you blueprints of OP items. The Shatsosaurus, it doesn't really do any of that stuff, you know? It doesn't have anything going on with it, which sucks. I do hope that when Genesis Part 1 and 2, or mainly Part 1, comes out, this thing will be a spawn that you can see in the water area of Genesis Part 1, because I think it would be potentially a good idea to have one of these guys as a boss runner, potentially. Now, I don't know how strong they are with the melee damage. I do know they're decently bulky, so at least they can do that. But I don't know. I just really want this thing to be better, which kind of sucks. And what also sucks, right, is that in the wild, you can see these things like jump out of the ocean or like, you know, the surface of the water, which is cool, but you can't do that if it's tamed. Like, come on, if I want to have a Shatsosaurus instead to wander, just let it do that. It would just be kind of cool, you know? It would just be kind of cool instead of just finding only wild ones doing that, you know? So, yeah. Forget what's this robot's name, but I call it the Butler robot. You know, it's a B tier, you know? All it is mainly is to help a lot with storage. At least that's how I use him, you know? I know there's like the whole thing you can let it auto-harvest resources and stuff for you, which I guess that's cool, but my main purpose whenever I have one of these guys is to legit sort my stuff in like resources and stuff like that. That's legitimately all I use those guys for, and it's definitely very handy because, you know, sometimes I just don't feel like grabbing a buttload of metal and making the journey to put it into a storage thing, then grabbing more. So these guys are very handy for that stuff like that. But I mean, other than that, nothing really too crazy about these guys. I'm gonna put the Dreadmere a little bit higher up. I think I prefer it more. So, yeah, nothing else to really say. It's just it was one of those creatures that we got in from the Bob's Tall which it wasn't the primary creature that we were supposed to get, or like the main one. It was just a buildable one, which I guess I kind of debated whether or not I want to put this guy on here or not. But I figured that just throw him on there because he's technically a tame that you can have. The Xenactivus. I think that I'll put this guy in a solid low A. Actually, no, high B. High B. Xenactivus is pretty much, I would like to describe it as the direwolf of the ocean, mainly for it being a glass cannon creature that has very low HP but deals a crap ton of damage, especially in packs. And also it being like a fish but can go on land for a little bit and then start taking damage is pretty funny, honestly. I really like that a lot. Like I said, just like the direwolf of the ocean, so definitely a pretty good solid tame. I don't know if it'll be good or not for the Mordor boss fight. I think some of these Ark Edition aquatic creatures, I'm definitely curious to see how they fare against the Mordor boss fight whenever that map comes out. So, yeah. Pretty good. Zaz, Xenactivus. The Flacasuchus. Ooh. I'm gonna put this guy mid-A. Now, I really like this thing's design. I like it that it's just a big desert lizard, and I think it's just a design I really like a lot. And also it being able to go in the sand and like pretty much like make like a little like whirlpool in the sand and catch creatures in there doing a massive amount of damage is cool. I like that it has some kind of like damage, lower the armor, not damage, but like it lowers like the armor of a target that's either hitting it or it hitting it. I think that's very cool. It's like kind of like, I would say, a T-Rex, but with way more abilities, I like to call it, kind of, pretty much. Since its stats is similar to a T-Rex, but not, I don't think it has as much damage. I think that's the thing. But overall, it's a really good, solid creature. And the only reason why I wouldn't put it higher as much as I would want to, because I really do like it, I just don't like its taming method. I think it's so, like, I think so far, out of all the creatures in Ark Survival Ascended, it's my least favorite taming method, and that's saying a decent amount. I know a lot of people don't like the Odyssean, with how its taming method is. I think that Flacasuchus is a lot worse, especially if you're trying to tame it on Scorched Earth. I know in, like, Aberration, which is strange to see these guys that spawn in Aberration, honestly, but whatever. It's just, a really difficult tame, and I don't like that aspect of it that much. The Dinotherium. High B, yeah, high B. The Dinotherium, very interesting designed creature. It's a real life, prehistoric elephant creature, so that's what it actually did look like, which is very unique. I don't know what's the whole like evolution reasoning why it has its tusk pointed downward, but probably someone more informative about that stuff than me could probably tell ya. The one thing I do think is very unique is its rally call, where it will give a different buff based on the gender of the Dinotherium. I think males get more melee and females get more defense, or like a increase of armor or something like that. I think that's how it works. I don't remember fully, so don't quote me too much on that. But yeah, that's very cool. But other than that, they don't have too much going on with them. They're just definitely a solid B creature. I don't tame them that often, but hey, definitely a good creature, I would say, to run against the dragon boss fight. That's one thing for sure. And with its rally call, you don't technically need a Utyrannus, but a Utyrannus would probably be a little bit better since it gives everything the whole defense and damage increase buff. Cosmo. Ooh. This guy's a low A. Cosmo is definitely a low A creature. I do like its design. It's a jumping spider, which is cute. I know a lot of people wanted the whole jumping spider to win one of the Ark community votes, but never did. And then we got one for Bob's Tall Tale, which is pretty cool. I think that's nice. People will probably argue about that or not, but yeah, I think it's designed very cool. And it being a a weapon pet, kind of, I guess. I don't know how to describe it fully because, it's not really a shoulder pad. It's kind of like how the Drakeling is, where it's like, no, I don't, no, wait, this guy is a shoulder pad. I don't know what I'm saying. I'm kind of blinking out with it. But, I really like the idea that this thing pretty much makes you become Spider Man. Has a lot of grapple stuff with it, which it also has some other abilities, like it can, like, make things slow by sticking web to it. But, like, you're mostly using this thing to become Spider Man, which I think is really cool. It's a really fun creature to use, especially if you're just, just solo or whatever, just swing around, and pretty useful to fly around or swing around, I should say, in like Aberration or any of the Aberration zones in the other arcs. So definitely good, solid tame. Yeah, nothing else to really say about it. The Yingling. Ooh, this is probably the most controversial so far creature that we got voted in the game, but I think he's a solid A tier. Yeah, he's a solid A tier. I'm doing some rearranges. So Helicorpion and Bison are moving to S tier. The more I'm looking at this, yeah, that makes a lot more sense. But yeah, the Yingling, I really do like it. Some people don't really like it that much because it doesn't fit the vibes with Aberration, which I can understand. I can 100% understand. But at the same time, this thing looks like some weird, messed up experiment and weird, like, fantasy creature. And I think, like, a fantasy looking creature for Aberration actually suits it well. It's not like some cave creeping crawly or like a disturbing looking creature at all, but I think it kind of fits the map decently well. And I know a lot of people are iffy with having a possible flyer, even though I'm pretty sure the Desmoses is actually able to fly in Aberration, but you can't tame one yet, so that is that. But it's a gliding creature, and I think it's pretty solid. It's like a mini version of the Rock Drake, but with other abilities. I think it's kind of interesting that it has a different like ways you use its feathers, like they shoot multiple of, and depending on what you feed it, you can actually have different effects on those feathers. Thing that's really cool, and this thing's over a pretty solid creature overall, honestly. The Elder Claw. You know what? This thing would be S, but I'm bumping it down to low B. Here is why. Design-wise, I love the Elder Claw. I've always wanted a like plant-based creature besides the Forest Titan as an actual tameable creature. And the Elder Claw definitely fits the bill with that. I think it's a pretty good and solid like design in general. It's very cool, and I like whenever it walks, like little flowers and stuff grow underneath it. Really, really cool. The only issue for me is that it's kind of supposed to be a little bit of a supportive creature, being able to boost it and allies melee, but honestly, it's kind of weak with the melee boost, Sure, once you get max stacks and stuff, you will have the same amount of melee damage increase as a U-Tyrannus. The issue is that the U-Tyrannus can just use that like instantly, but the Elder Claws, how they increase their damage with the totem, it's just, it takes way too long, honestly, just to get that up. So, for it being a supportive creature and having that, I don't know. I think the totem itself, that's a really cool concept, and I think that they could maybe expand a little bit on that. I think maybe me personally, for how many stacks you need to give you and your ally tames that damage increase, it should be a little bit higher than 25%. Maybe that's a little controversial for balance wise, but I'm saying it should be maybe like somewhere between 30 to 40%, because it definitely takes you a decent amount of time from getting 0 to 200 stacks. It's quite a bit of effort you put in there. So that's just maybe a little hot take potentially for me. And overall, its other abilities is pretty cool. I like that it becomes a gigantic like bear creature or whatever. Whenever you have when you like consume all those stacks and whatnot, you become like a big empowered version of it, which I think that's really cool. But I don't know. Other than that, it's not super impressive with its abilities. It's taming method's kind of like a plant version of the Rhiniolantha, where you gotta kill it, put its seed in the crop pot, and then give it whatever it needs. And some of the requirements, they're not bad to get, but they're just kind of like really, you know. So I think it's a creature that I was expecting to potentially put in S tier, but I didn't really fall in love with it as much as I did. The Pyromane. Now, this has been the most controversial creature we've ever gotten in Ark, which I'm going to be putting this guy mid B. The main reason why is it's just kind of boring to use, you know? It's just a fiery version of a Shadowmane, pretty much, is what the Pyromane is. And that kind of sucks, because I kind of wish it was a little bit more unique. Like, the only, like, unique aspect of it is that it can leave a trail of fire behind it, and also, like, it can heal itself by consuming the stacks and stuff, which I guess that's cool and all, but, like, I don't know. And, you know, it does have that whole shoulder pet thing to it, but I rarely ever use it with the Pyromane, at least for me personally. It's kind of a boring fantasy creature if you really think about it. Like, out of all, like, the ideas I could have done for a fantasy tame, I think the Pyromane's the most boring. And you know what? Just to be sure I let this be known, I'm gonna make sure I put the rest of the fantasy tames above it, because this thing's just boring. It's just really boring to use. I used it for the center to use against the boss fight, and haven't really tamed one ever since. They're just, you know, I mean, they're good, but they're just not fun to use. And I think that's what's pretty important when it comes to a creature. Even though it may be OP or whatever, if it's not fun to use, then kind of like goes down. Which is probably why all the creatures lower than it are not that fun to use that much, or just are kind of like you know. But those are my rankings for all the creatures we've gotten so far for Ark Survival Ascended. And do you agree or do you disagree? Let me know down in the comments below. But most importantly, let me know what creature you are excited for Lost Colony. I will gotta say, I'm definitely excited to see how the Veilworn's evolutions are. Definitely excited for that. Although I do love the Odyssean or Odyssean. I don't know why I keep saying his name wrong or whatever. But yeah, that's all for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, hit that like button to the channel. Hitting that subscribe button will always be appreciated. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace out, and have a good one.